How's it going, YouTube land? The 12th is fast approaching. Should be end of this week here, and we get March of the Machines Aftermath, and I'm not sure if I should be doing a video for that. I know that it got spoiled by a not so smart YouTuber very early, actually a couple days before the actual March of the Machines set came out. But there's still some fun cards in there. Let me know if you want to see, like, maybe a draft box open. Not draft, epilogue pack box open. Because it feels like opening a collector's booster box at this point seems pointless. But, you know, let me know. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at a deck tech of Jared Carthelian. This is going to be an upgrade to the precon. I chose to do the Jegantha companion version. So let's talk about Jared Carthelian really quick. Planeswalker, cost 5 colors, 5 loyalty on ETB. +1, you can create a 3/3 Kavu creature token with trample that is all colors. -3, you can choose up to 2 target creatures. For each of them, put a +1/+1 counter on it equal to the number of colors it is. And then finally, for -6, you can return target multicolored card from your graveyard to your hand. If that card is all colors, you get to draw a card. Yeah, draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens, which is kind of nice because that helps you cast it if you're not... I mean, you should kind of already have your mana base fixed by that point, but, you know, it's just nice to have those treasures. So really quickly, let's talk about the restrictions that Jegantha brings into this. As a companion, no card in your starting deck can have more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. So basically what that means is that we can't have more than one of each color pips. So no double white, no double blue, no double black, no double red, no triple, you know, whatever. One of each color pip. That isn't actually as restrictive as it seems. It does mean that there are quite a few cards you won't see in here. For instance, there are no ultimatums because the ultimatums have multiple color pips. The benefit of running Jegantha the Wellspring is that you can tap it to add Wooburg to your mana pool. And this mana can't be spent to pay generic costs. Well, the deck doesn't have a lot in the way of generic cost, or there will be a lot of ways to spend that mana. Worst case scenario, you can always use it to spend to recast your commander. So that is Jegantha the Wellspring and Jared Carthelian. So this is going to be a 5-color, all kinds of weird deck. I did upgrade this, however, I did not upgrade the mana base. Partially because I have now 4, maybe 5 5-color decks, and the mana base to fix a 5-color deck is excruciatingly expensive. So this one I left the same, and there are ways kind of around it. One thing you should look into is Amulet of Vigor. I do not have that in here. It is definitely something you should put into a deck like this. It is also like a $25 card, so I didn't feel the need to grab it. All right, pull this aside. We're going to take a look at creatures. Let me just sift through here and grab all the creatures. So I'm going to point out as often as I can the stuff that already came in the deck. We have Arshalos, the Lagoon Mystic. This was already in the deck, and it's extremely necessary as long as he is tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped, and as long as he is untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. So that means that the lands that enter the battlefield tapped will become untapped. So it's really important because, again, the land base is whatever was in Painbow to begin with some like minor changes. So this really does help with getting that stuff to be a teensy bit faster. I'm not going to say this is a fast deck, but this helps. Next up, we have Baleful Strix. Again, this came with the deck. This is a 1/1 flyer with Death Touch, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. This costs 2. It's just on point. You get a 1/1 body with flying and Death Touch, and you get to draw a card, and it only costs 2 to do that, so you can't go wrong with this. Best 2-drop in the deck, I think, arguably. We got Bloom Tender. So this is something I added to the deck, and it's really important for the deck. It's 1 in a green. You can tap it for each color among permanents you control and add 1 mana of that color. So basically, if you have Jared Carthelion in play, she's going to tap for 1 of each color. And that's really important in this deck. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's kind of similar to this. We got Chromanticore. This was something that was in it already. It costs 1 of each color. And it has Bestow for 2 and 1 of each color. It's basically an enchantment creature that has Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, and Trample, and Lifelink. And if you use it for its Bestow cost, it gives the enchanted creature +4/+4, Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Lifelink. Basically turning the creature into a Chromanticore. It's just a really cool card. If you can reoccur it, there's a lot of versatility to this. We've got Coiling Oracle. One green, 1 blue for a 1/1. When Coiling Oracle enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you can put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. I like the fact that it doesn't say draw the card. While it's a small pittance, it's still really nice that it doesn't say draw the card. Plus, it can help you ramp out. Really good. Got ourselves Feyburrow Elder. Very similar to the Bloom Tender. Or was it Bloom Tender? Yeah, it is Bloom Tender. It's a Vigilance, +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. So that's where its power and toughness will come from. And you can tap it and do the same thing as Bloom Tender. Again, super important in this deck. Not to mention, it can become a 5/5 with Vigilance. So we're not only going to get a nice attack out of it, we can also get the mana out of it. We got Philogy Wayfarer for 2 and a green. This guy counts as having all colors. Super important because especially with Jared's ability, you're going to see it get +5/+5 or 5 +1/+1 counters. But more importantly, multicolored spells you cast have Convoke, so all those colorless parts of it you can pay by tapping creatures, and in fact, as long as you tap creatures that have a color that shares with part of its mana cost, you can tap that too. So that's pretty cool. I rarely get this guy on the battlefield, so I don't know how it plays so well. And again, this is something that came with the deck. Feyburrow also came with the deck. Coiling also came with the deck. And Chromanticore also came with the deck. Next up, we have Garth One-Eye. This is something I added to it. Garth One-Eye is 1 of each color for a 5/5. You can tap him to choose a card name that hasn't been chosen among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus, and then create a copy of the card with the chosen name, and then cast that copy. You may cast that copy. There isn't anything in here that's like, I would say, super busted. Even with the Black Lotus, you have to sacrifice it to use its ability. Yeah, it's a pretty big jump, but by the time you have enough to cast Garth, that's actually kind of not as powerful. Disenchant is really great. Brain Geyser, a great way to draw cards. Terror, good way to destroy a creature. Can't be black, can't be artifact, but it doesn't matter. Shivan Dragon is a nice flyer with fire breathing. Regrowth helps you bring something back from your graveyard. And then, of course, we have the Black Lotus. I like this versatility. There are things you could put in here instead of it, like Joda. But I really liked how this worked, so you can look into it. Next, we have General Ferris Rockrick. This is another one that I added. For 1, a red and a white. It has hexproof from monocolors, 3/1. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get to create a 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. This is going to happen pretty much throughout the course of the deck. There isn't anything in here I think of besides like Bloom Tender and maybe a small handful of cards that aren't multicolored. So this is going to trigger quite a few times. Next up, we have Glint-Eye Nephilim. This came with the deck, which is good. 1 of every color except white. When it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw that many cards. It's 2/2. You can pay 1 to discard a card to give it +1/+1, so you can draw more cards. It's a great way to filter through, so you can get the cards you need as opposed to ones you don't absolutely need right then. Next up, we have Hero of Precinct 1. I guess I was wrong. There are multicolored or monocolored cards in here. This came with the deck, 1 and a white. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get to create a 1/1 white creature token, and you could probably start to see a little bit of a theme here. It's not necessarily go wide, but this is definitely a token deck with a lot of chance to go wide. We got Kavus from Jared, we got 4/4 Golems from Rockerick, and then we have the humans from Hero of Precinct 1. Next up, we have a Luna, Apex of Wishes, which also came with the deck, surprisingly. It's 2, a green, a blue, and a red. Its mutate cost is 3, a hybrid red-green, and 2 blue. Has flying and trample, and whenever this creature mutates, you get to exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card onto the battlefield or into your hand. This is super good. It's kind of like a tutor. You kind of don't get to choose what you tutor, but it's still really cool. We got Jensen Carthelion, Druid Exile. This guy is green and white. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get to scry 1. If that spell was all colors, you get to create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. And for 5, you can tap this guy to add 1 of each color. It's a good way to filter if you're not fixed. He comes out very early because he only costs 2 mana, so this is a fantastic filter card. Also, I think he came with the deck. Let me just double check. Yes, came with the deck. We got Knight of New Alara. 2, a green and a white, also came with the deck. Each other multicolored creature you control gets +1/+1 and has, or for each color it has. This is really great with the Kavus and that Jarfali? I don't remember what it was called. Falaji. The Falaji Wayfarer. Because they get +1/+1 for each color, so that's a +5/+5. But in general, with a lot of the cards in here, we get +2s, +3s, +5s, you name it. The Nephilim all are going to get +4. It's just really powerful. Next up, we have Maelstrom Archangel, another one that came with the deck, 5 colors. Flying, whenever Maelstrom Archangel deals combat damage to a player, you may cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. It's a 5/5. This is already a terrifying body. It only costs 5 for a 5/5 with flying. But when it deals combat damage, you get to cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost, which can be really disgusting in this deck because a lot of the cards in here require a lot of fixing to get out there. So if you can get it out without having to worry about what you have as far as lands, that's fantastic. Next up, we have Nethroid, Apex of Death. Yes, another Apex, and yes, it came with the deck. 2, a white, a black, and a green, or you can mutate it for 4, hybrid green-white, 2 black, Death Touch and Lifelink. Whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power of 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You can imagine that this is a very important ability in here because people don't want you to have the stuff that you have, especially things like the Knight of New Alara and so on. So this is a great way to get those back. We got Okagachi, Vengeful Kami. This guy was in the deck as well. 1 and Wooburg. Flying and trample for a 6/6 whenever Okagachi Vengeful Kami deals combat damage to a player. If that player attacked you during their last turn, exile target non-land permanent that player controls. A little bit of control element here. Costs a lot to put this guy on the battlefield. It also really feels bad when this guy gets destroyed. So, hopefully you get some value out of him. Otherwise, it is what it is. Next, we have Primeval Spawn, and yes, this came with the deck. No, it didn't come with the extended art, as you can imagine. I just happened to pull one and put it in here, which was part of the inspiration for making this, which seems really dumb now that I think about it now. Primeval Spawn is 10. 5 generic and 1 of each color. For a 10/10, if it would enter the battlefield, and it wasn't cast, or no mana was spent to cast it, exile it instead. So this guy, you just have to cast 4 mana, the entirety of it. It kind of sucks, but you just got to do what you got to do. There's enough dorks and ramp in here that you should be able to cast it earlier than turn 10. It's Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. When it leaves the battlefield, exile top 10 cards of your library. You may cast any number of spells with total mana value 10 or less from among them without paying their mana costs. The cool thing about that ability, however, is that it would still happen if you have this part happen, because it doesn't say when Primeval Spawn dies. It says when Primeval Spawn leaves the battlefield, and this text would be leaving the battlefield. So you still could get value out of it. You just won't also get this nice little 10/10 Vigilance Trample lifelink. So it just depends where you are in the game at the time that you cast this. It also comes with the deck. Rien, Angel of Rebirth, comes with a deck. This is 2 and Naya colors. Flying for a 5/4. Other multicolored creatures you control get +1/+0. And whenever a multicolored creature you control dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the end step. This has to be in here. You can understand why a lot of this came with the deck and why a lot of it just kind of has to stay in the deck. Because it's very synergistic with the stuff that's in here. This is a great way to make sure, again, that the Knight of New Alara, your Fabro Elder, and your Philagi, what's his face, all come back to you, so you don't lose them. Recursion is really important. Next up, we have Scion of Draco. This guy is 12. I added this guy to the deck. It has Domain, which means that, in this case, the Domain is this card costs 2 less to cast for each basic land among lands you control, up to a total of -10. So you could play this guy for 2 if you have one of each basic land in play. Probably not going to happen, but, just in case. It has Flying, and each creature you control has Vigilance if it's white, Hexproof if it's blue, Lifelink if it's black, First Strike if it's red, and Trample if it's green. It's a 4/4, which means it's kind of squishy, especially for 12, but the ability is insane, because some of these creatures are going to benefit from all of the abilities, and that's just insane. That's a lot of value. He's going to die pretty quickly, I will just say that outright. Next up, we have Selvala, Explorer Returned. This was in the deck. 2 a green and white for a 2/4 parlay. You can tap it, and each player reveals the top card of the library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you add one green mana to your mana pool and gain a life. And then each player draws a card. I think it's pretty cool. It's very group huggy, but really, honestly, you should be in a position where you can take advantage of this a little bit better. You get the green mana, let's be honest. That's ramp. We got Solemn Simulacrum. It came with the deck, but let's be honest, what deck doesn't have Solemn Simulacrum in it? It's just good. Maybe green decks don't, but most decks do. Any deck that doesn't have a lot of ramp is going to have a Solemn Simulacrum. When it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle. When it dies, you get to draw a card. It's 2/2. It costs 4, but hey, I think it's worth it. We got Surok, Dragonclaw. Again, this came in the deck. There wasn't a lot that needed to be changed for this deck, but you could see the stuff that did need to be changed are quite oomphy. Very good stuff. Anyway, Surok has Flash, can't be countered, and creatures you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have Trample. And that's really important. Trample is so important, Commander. It's just a really important thing. I can't overstate it. We got Tiller Engine. Tiller Engine has to be in here. This guy is 2 for a 1/3. Whenever a land enters the battlefield tapped under your control, you can either choose to untap it or tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. That's a lot of control for you and a lot of versatility. Maybe you don't need the lands anymore. Maybe it's late enough in the game that the lands no longer matter if they come into play tapped. So now you can start tapping down your opponent's stuff, and that could actually matter. More importantly, in the beginning part of the game, it allows you to bring those things into play untapped, and that's really important too. Again, I don't have the Amulet of Vigor in here, but Amulet of Vigor is probably something else you should put in here because, again, it allows your tapped stuff to come into play untapped. It's probably also cheaper than fixing the mana base in here, just FYI. We got Dran's Guild Courier in here. This came with the deck. This guy is 4 for a 3/3 that is all colors. We benefit from all colors, just in general. So there's a lot of things in here that help creatures depending on the colors they are. Now, there is a flying artifact that is probably better just because it has flying, but I do believe it costs more. I don't remember, though. It's a Sphinx, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, we've got Two-Headed Hellkite. Again, comes with a deck. It's 1 in Wooburg. Flying Menace Haste. When Two-Headed Hellkite attacks, you get to draw 2 cards, and it is a 5/5. It's got Flying, and it's got menace, so it's going to be really difficult to block this. It has haste, so it attacks on the first turn, and you get to draw 2 cards every time it deals combat damage. No, I'm sorry, every time it attacks. Oof, that's really good. So just in general, this is a super good card. Great for card advantage. Costs 6 though. I mean, it is what it is. We got Xyrus, the Writhing Storm. Yeah, came with the deck. It is 2, a green, a white, or blue, and a red. No white. Sorry, no white. It is a flying 3/5. Whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw each turn, or sorry, each of their draw steps, create a 1/1 green snake creature token, and whenever Xyrus, the Writhing Storm, deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. Yeah, so it seems group huggy until you start getting an army of snakes and your opponents have a difficult time trying to deal with the token army that is happening. And yeah, they're only 1/1s, but hey, I mean, any amount of damage is good damage, right? Finally, we have another card that I added, Your Tiller Nephilim. It's funny because this deck didn't have anything but Glint-Eye Nephilim. None of the other Nephilims. And I'm not saying the other Nephilims need to be in here, but this Nephilim made sense in here. I don't know why it wasn't in here. Anyway, Your Tiller Nephilim. This is all colors except for green for 2/2. When it attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to play tapped and attacking. And I don't feel like I have to say that again, but return target creature card from your graveyard to play tapped and attacking. I mean, that's really good. If you have the Knight of New Alara in play, this guy is a 6/6 that just returns things from your graveyard tapped and attacking. That's pretty freaking good, not gonna lie. All right, next up is Instants. Let's see how many of those there are. Not quite. Not that many. All right, we got Abzan Charm. This guy is 1 white, 1 black, and 1 green. You get to choose 1. Exile target creature with power 3 or greater, or you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or distribute 2 +1/+1 encounters among 2 target creatures. I like the versatility in this. Being able to draw cards and lose life. The +1/+1 counter is super good. Exile target creature with power 3 or greater. There's really no bad option on this. Next one we have is Beast Within. Destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 beast creature token. This has become increasingly more in favor, in my opinion, for me, because it says destroy target permanent and not necessarily destroy target creature. So I've been in a lot of instances where an enchantment or an artifact seems to be the issue at the table, and this is a great way of destroying that. And then they get a 3/3 vanilla creature in replacement for it, and as much as I've been playing Commander, I can tell you the 3/3 vanilla creature is not all that scary. It might seem scary for those of you who play 60-card formats, I understand, but not in Commander. Next up is Growth Spiral. Growth Spiral is so good, it got banned, let's be honest. Green-blue, draw a card, you may play an additional land from your hand to the battlefield. Or you just may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It doesn't say you may play an additional land, but I'm sure there's a reason. Anyway, moving on, Naya Charm. Red, green, white, choose 1. Naya Charm deals 3 damage to target creature, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, or tap all creatures target player controls. So, again, I don't see any bad options here. The 3 damage to target creature sucks for the mana cost, 3 for 3, but it can get rid of something problematic, especially if it has low toughness but high power. We got return target card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. This is a great way of getting some of these, again, reoccursion that you might need. I have done this once to get an Abzan Charm because the Abzan Charm was much more useful to me at the time. Weird to say, but I did do that once. And then tap all creatures target player controls. It could be a possible way to kill an opponent, just outright. So, good charm, good charm. Path to Exile. This is self-explanatory. I probably also have a Swords to Plowshares in here. For the record, though, let's see. That was in the deck, that was in the deck, that was in the deck. So these all came in the deck. Same with the Path to Exile. Exile target creature. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Yeah, for 1 white, that's really good. Just exile target creature. So, bye-bye indestructible. Next, we have Sultai Charm. 1 black, 1 green, 1 blue. Choose 1. Target monocolored. Destroy target monocolored creature. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Again, no bad options here. Really, just no bad options here. Drawing 2 cards and having to discard 1 card, not bad. Destroy target artifact enchantment, great. Destroy target monocolored creature. Tell me who isn't running monocolored creatures, and, you know, then we'll have to talk. It's Commander, come on. Also, came with the deck. Sylvan Reclamation came with the deck. 3 and a green and a white. Exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Basic land cycling for 2. Worst case scenario, if you have to basic land cycle this, okay, you still get some value out of it, right? But if you are able to cast that, that's 2 artifacts and or enchantments. I can't tell you how many times I've probably said this in my videos, but enchantments are sticky. So having enchantment destruction is really important, especially these days when people realize how sticky enchantments are. Terminate! 1 black, 1 red, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated. This used to be probably one of the best kill spells in Magic when it first came out, back in the day. But, you know, since then it has fell from glory. Obviously, there's so many other things that do so many better things. But yes, this used to be so good. This was the original art, too. Anyway, this came with the deck. And then finally, we have Unite the Coalition. Yes, all of the instants came with the deck. For 2 and a white, a blue, a red, and a black, and a green. You can choose 5, and you may choose the same mode more than once. Target permanent phases out. Target player draws a card. Exile target player's graveyard. Unite the Coalition deals 2 damage to any target. And destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, versatility. And you can choose the same mode multiple times. I like that. There's a lot to that that's really cool. All right, next up. Sorceries. And I know it seems like there's not much changes here, but there are some really good ones. Bring to Light, for instance. This is a card I added to it for 3, a green, and a blue. It has Converge. You can search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast Bring to Light. Exile that card, then shuffle your library. Then you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. You can pay up to all 5 colors, so you can search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with a converted mana cost of 5 or less. Cost less than or equal? Yeah, 5 or less. So really, it's a tutor. It's a very interesting tutor. You can play it without paying its mana cost, so it doesn't matter that it costs 5, truthfully, if you think about it. Anyway, there's a reason it costs 5, obviously. Next up, we have Conflux, another thing I added to the deck. I'm really surprised this wasn't in there, but I can also see why it wasn't in there. It's kind of powerful. So for 3, a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green, you can search your library for a white card, a blue card, a black card, a red card, and a green card. Reveal those cards and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. I don't really think I have to explain that to you, but that's freaking crazy. And you could pick 5 cards that are all 5 colors if you wanted to, as long as you told people, this is my green card, this is my black card, this is my white card. So this, in this deck, is really powerful. You still have to play them, but hey, you got to tutor up 5 cards, and they're probably going to be bangers. Just saying. Cultivate was in the deck. Pretty simple. 2 and a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal one of those cards, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then put the other one into your hand, then shuffle. Farseek came with the deck. Pretty simple. 1 and a green. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. We got Iridian Maelstrom. For 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. Destroy each creature that isn't all colors. It's restrictive, but whether you like it or not, it's still technically one-sided because there's still several creatures that will avoid this in your deck. So, yeah, I think it's good. Well, I guess I wouldn't say it's good. It's good in this deck. Next up, we have Kodama's Reach. Already comes in the deck. 2, a green. Basically the same thing, by the way, as Cultivate. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal one of those cards. Put that onto the battlefield tapped, and then put the other one into your hand, then shuffle. You reveal both cards, but you know what I mean. Merciless Eviction came with the deck. It is 4, a white, and a black. You get to choose one. Either exile all artifacts, exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, or exile all planeswalkers. I like this card because it literally says exile, and a lot of the problems that you have with board wipes these days is somebody playing Heroic Intervention or Rootbound Defense or whatever it's called, Flawless Maneuver, the thing that gives them all indestructible. Yay, we just played a board wipe, and it should have board wiped, but somebody played a Heroic Intervention, and now they have all the creatures, and you have nothing. Suddenly things got scary. Well, get around it with Merciless Eviction. Exile. Not to mention, it can hit enchantments too, so if somebody's just playing a really enchantment heavy, like Enchantress type deck, this does that too. Next up, we have Migration Path. It came with the deck. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. It has cycling. I like this because it has cycling. I hate this because it costs 4. This is definitely something that you can definitely upgrade. Probably with a Sky Shroud Claim, and you lose the cycling, but at least you get to search for 2 forests, so if you ever do mess with the land base and you try to put those triomes in there that count as 3 different land types, it would just be better. But I didn't mess with the land base, so you know, that is the way it is. We got Painful Truths. This should be in any 3-color deck, let's be honest. For 2 and a black, it has Converge. You draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. That is such a very awkward statement. Yeah, so you can draw up to 3 cards and lose 3 life. Again, I think it should be in every 3-color deck. Just saying, it's super good. And then finally, we have Search for Tomorrow. This guy is 2 and a green to search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. It doesn't come into play tapped, which is really important. That doesn't make it worth 2 and a green, but it does have suspend 2 for 1 green, so you can just pay the 1 green on first turn when you get it, suspend it for 2, and eventually it does its thing. Again, it came with the deck. There, you could tell like things like the Search for Tomorrow, the Migration Path. Well, I guess in here, that's all I would do is take out the Migration Path and Search for Tomorrow for something a little bit more effective. That's just what I'm just playing it with as little upgrades as possible for those of you who want to try and create a deck that is a little bit, that's already kind of good out of the box, but with a few extra upgrades is kind of crazy. Not necessarily crazy good, but just better. All right, we got our Arcane Signet. Came with the deck. This one's an obvious one. 2, you can add 1 mana of any color of your commander's color identity. So in this case, one of any color. Chromatic Lantern is something added to this. I am actually really shocked that I had to add a Chromatic Lantern to this. I don't think it's so expensive that it's something that shouldn't be in commander decks that are precons. It also, in this deck, is a fixer outright for this deck, so I'm really shocked that this wasn't in there. Lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. You can also tap this to add 1 mana of any color. It only costs 3 to cast it. This is really cool for some of the lands in here, like the slow fetches, and if you're not aware of what a slow fetch is, it comes into play tapped, and then you can tap it to sacrifice it to fetch for a land. Doesn't make you lose a life, but you can actually play this and suddenly those slow fetches you don't even have to sacrifice. You can just tap it for mana. Super important. We got Coalition Relic. This guy is already in the deck. 3 to add 1 mana of any 1 color, or you can tap it to put a charge counter on Coalition Relic, and then at the beginning of the pre-combat main phase, remove all charge counters from Coalition Relic to add 1 mana of any 1 color for each charge counter removed this way. This deck isn't one of those decks where you can shift a whole bunch of charge counters on here, so you're only ever going to usually have 1 charge counter on here. That's not always true. Sometimes proliferate happens, we'll see, but for the most part, you're only ever going to have the 1 charge counter. But that just basically means that for every other turn, you're going to get 2 mana out of this instead of just 1, which is super cool. I like it. Plus, the 2 different mana that it creates don't have to be the same color. It's just a really good card, just in general. Next up, we have Commander Sphere. This is another one that I probably would replace. It came with the deck. 3, you can add 1 mana of your commander's color identity, and you can sacrifice it to draw a card. There's some argument here that the idea that you can just sacrifice it outright without paying a cost to draw a card is really powerful, but I'm sure that there are better artifacts that you can put in here. Yeah, it's just my thought process. We've got Felwar Stone. This is 2 for add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. You can't go wrong with it in this deck because literally this deck has every color, so whatever your opponents are playing, they're guaranteed to have color of your choice that you need. We got, oh, and yeah, that came with the deck, obviously. We got Obsidian Obelisk. Came with the deck. Cost 2, enters the battlefield tapped, unless you have Arshalos. You can tap it for colorless, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only spend that mana to cast multicolored spells. Not usually a problem. There's obviously quite a few monocolored in here, but there's also a fair amount of multicolored, so. Sol Ring. This, weirdly enough, did not come in the deck. there was no Soul Ring in this deck. And I kind of understand where they were coming from. Mostly everything is colored, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a ton of things that had generic in their mana cost. So that kind of threw me for a curve. There was no Soul Ring in this deck. I added a Soul Ring, and I got to tell you, it was definitely worth it. And then finally, we got Tome of the Guild Pact, another one that I added, 5. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get to draw a card, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. It's a mana rock for any color, and whenever you play a multicolored spell, you get to draw a card. There's, like, no downside in this deck, although I could see the downside in other decks. Alright, so that's the artifacts. Next up is enchantments. I don't think there's a lot of enchantments. Alright, starting with Abundant Growth. Came with the deck. Abundant Growth is just a good card in general. For 1 green, you enchant a land. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and the land can be tapped to add any color as opposed to what its original ability was. I think that's great for mana fixing. It's also another way to enchant one of those slow fetches so that you don't actually have to sacrifice the slow fetch to get a land, for it to actually have some purpose and value. Next we have Broker's Ascendancy. This is something I added for 1 green, 1 white, and 1 blue. At the beginning of your end step, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. This is invaluable to the deck. You have to have this. You have to, because this deck is slow, so you need to bulk up as quickly as possible if you want to win the game. Next we have Maelstrom Nexus. Ironically, this is something that actually came in the deck, which was weird to me because things like Chromatic Lantern and Conflux and Soul Ring didn't come in the deck. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. Anyway, 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. This first spell you cast each turn has Cascade. That's really powerful in this deck. A lot of the spells in here are really expensive, so won't sneeze at that. Very good. We got Mana Cannons. This is in the deck, and for good reason. 2 and a red. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, Mana Cannons deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of colors in that spell. So it could be up to 5. It could be as low as 1. But no matter what, you're going to get some really interesting damage. Well, with artifacts, no damage, but it doesn't matter. You're going to get some damage out of this, and it could be any target. You can hit battles with this, you know. Just saying. Not that I have any battles in here, although there's one good one. Yeah. Invasion of New Alara. Or, not New Alara, just Invasion of Alara. Definitely put that one in here. Next up, we have the Kami War. Just the Kami War. Sorry. Don't listen to me. This is just called the Kami War. I added this one. This one is 1, a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green. For Chapter 1, you get to exile target non-land permanent opponent controls. Good removal. For Chapter 2, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then each opponent discards a card. Another great way to remove, as well as get rid of hand advantage. And then finally, Chapter 3, you get to exile it, and it returns to the battlefield transformed as another Okagachi. Okagachi Made Manifest. It counts as all colors. It has Flying and Trample as a 6/6. Whenever Okagachi Made Manifest attacks, if any player chooses a non-land card in your graveyard, and then you return that card to your hand, Okagachi Made Manifest gets +X+O, where X is the mana value of that card. It could get really, really powerful, and all the low mana stuff is really impactful in the game anyway, like Farseek or Path to Exile, which weirdly enough I didn't have Swords of Plowshares in here. I'll have to think about that. Anyway, yeah, super cool. All right, and then the final card we have in the enchantments is Widespread Thieving. This is another one that I added to the deck. For 2 and a red, you have a Hideaway 5, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a treasure token. And then you may pay Wooburg. If you do, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So between the Faebearer Elder, the Jegantha, the Bloom Tender, and any numerous other things in here, paying Wooburg without actually having to tap lands isn't all that difficult. Not to mention, whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get to create a treasure token with this. That's a lot of just latent value right there. So yeah, this is really good. right. Next, we're doing Planeswalkers. The only Planeswalker in here is Nicol Bolas, the God Pharaoh, for 4 of blue, a black, and a red. For 7 loyalty on ETB, you can do +2 and have target opponent exile cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card until end of turn. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. If you're playing a deck that has a lot of value in it just by cheating things into play, that is a fantastic ability. But you can also just +1 to have each opponent exile 2 cards from his or her hand, which over time can just be really bad for them. Getting rid of their options in their hand to deal with things on the table can mess up a game for people. And then for -4, Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh deals 7 damage to target opponent or creature an opponent controls. Is it or? Yeah, or. Which is a fantastic removal. And finally, for -12, you exile each non-land permanent your opponents control. A great one-sided board wipe that could end the game. Who knows? Anyway, very good. All right, next up is the non-basic lands. Like I said, I didn't do a huge amount of changes to here, but there are 1 or 2 additions to this. Let me just separate all the non-basics. Cool. There are a couple additions. Also, the Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh was an added card, not a card that came with the deck. Okay, we got the Arcane Sanctum, and there is going to be one of each of these that was already in the deck. This is the Triomes before Triomes. They do not have basic land types. They do come into play tapped. They don't cycle, but they still do the add 1 of 3 colors thing. We got Bad River. This is an example of a slow fetch. These fetches come into play tapped, but you can sacrifice them to search your library for an island or swamp, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. The key here is that, again, they don't look for basics. They only look for the basic land typings, and they enter the battlefield untapped, which is super powerful. The only downside to these guys, again, is that they enter the battlefield tapped, which is why they call them slow fetches. Next up, we have Canopy Vista. Again, came with the deck. This guy has basic land typings and taps for whatever the basic land typings are, in this case, green-white, and enters battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands. These guys are almost always going to enter battlefield tapped because there are hardly any basic lands in this deck. We got Cascading Cataracts, came with the deck. It's indestructible. You can tap it for colorless, or you can tap 5 and it to add 5 mana of any combination of colors. This is a great way to filter in to get Wooburg if you just don't have that on the table. I think this is a really good card in here, but there might be better cards to put in here. Next, we got Cinderglade, same thing as the Canopy Vista. Enters tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands, has basic land typings. Then we got Command Tower. Yeah. Don't have to go into that. Crumbling Necropolis, again, Triome that comes into play tapped that doesn't have basic land typings. We got Crystal Quarry. Crystal Quarry is very similar to the Cataracts, except the Cataracts allows you to kind of customize the colored mana, whereas the Crystal Quarry forces you to get Wooburg. But still, it filters, so again, if you're stuck, this is a great way to filter. And again, so far, everything that I've gone through is already in the deck. Evolving Wilds allows you to fetch for a basic land. Exotic Orchard came with the deck. It's like the Felwar Stone. Floodplain, slow fetch, came with the deck. Frontier Bivouac, Triome before Triomes. Grasslands, slow fetch. Jungle Shrine, Triome before Triome. Croson Verge is just a really good card in general. The downside is it comes into play tapped, and what it fetches for comes into play tapped. But it fetches for forest cards, or for a forest card or a plains card. It does not say basic, so you can search up your Canopy Vistas, you can search up your Shocklands, if you will. Obviously, I didn't put them in here because it's too expensive, but Mountain Valley, slow fetch. Murmuring Bosk, again, really good card to put in here. This is a great target for the Croson Verge, because you can use the Croson Verge to find a Murmuring Bosk and a Canopy Vista if you need to. It counts as a forest, and as it enters the battlefield, you have to reveal a Tree Folk from your hand. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped, so you're just most likely going to have this enter the battlefield tapped, unless for whatever reason you already have the Feyburrow Elder in your hand. You can also tap it for a black or a white if you have it deal 1 damage to you. We got Mystic Monastery. This was a Triome before Triome. Nomad Outpost, Triome before Triomes. Opulent Palace, Triome before Triomes. Prairie Stream, another one of those tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands. This one's Plains Island. Prairie Stream. Rocky Tar Pit is a slow fetch. Sandstep Citadel is a Triome before Triomes. Savage Lands, Triome before Triomes. Seaside Citadel is a Triome before Triomes. Smoldering Marsh, another one of them, enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands. And has basic land typings. Okay, so this is one that I added into it. It is Spara's Headquarters. It taps for green, white, and blue. If you go through all your pips in this deck, you have more green, white, and blue pips than you do of any other colors, so it made sense to add this as opposed to other Triomes. This is a Triome that has basic land typings. Forest, Plains, and Island. It also has Cycling. Next up, we have Sunken Hollow. We have Terramorphic Expanse, same thing as Evolving Wilds. And then finally, another one that I added. So I added 2 lands to this, and they were absolutely necessary. This is World Tree. Enters the battlefield taps for green, and as long as you have 6 or more lands, lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. So it fixes like the Chromatic Lantern, except that it has a condition. For 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, and 2 green, you can tap and sacrifice the World Tree to search your library for any number of God cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. That part of the card you don't need to pay attention to because there are no God cards in here. There isn't a single one, and there is no Maskwood Nexus, so it just doesn't matter. We have this in here for color fixing. Again, I'm not really sure why they didn't have this in here. I'm pretty sure this is like a $4 card. Pretty sure it's a $4 card. $5 card. Who knows? It's up there with the Chromatic Lantern, and it's so necessary in this deck. But anyway, yeah. World Tree, super good. And then we have our basics. There isn't a lot, like I said. We have 1 and 2 forests. We have 1 island. We have 1 mountain. We have 2 plains, and we have 1 swamp. So not a lot of basics. So, like, if we were just going to talk about going in there and changing some of these cards out, the first thing that you probably want to hit are these things that come into play tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands. Not that they're not good because we have the land type, basic land typing here, but you can switch these out for shock lands and they're a lot more consistent that way because sometimes you can have them come into play tapped, but you can also just forcibly shock them in to have them come into play untapped. You might also think about just switching out the sanctums. I'm sorry, the old triomes for the newer triomes that have basic land typings, so that things that search for lands that don't look for basic lands have something else to target that might actually enter the battlefield untapped, or at least could. I guess the triomes can't, but at least they have cycling. That's what I'm trying to say. If you wanted to upgrade the slow fetches, your best bet would be to upgrade into the regular fetches. You lose a life, but they come into play untapped. So, you know, I don't think you need them. Arshalos kind of makes them regular fetches, but it is conditional on having Arshalos. And then the only other thing that I could think of is you could probably use the MDFC lands in here as well, as kind of a replacement for, I don't know, any numerous things that you see in here. But yeah, the land base is probably the biggest slowdown in this deck. Whoops, almost lost that. So anyway, that is the Jared Carthelian Jegantha pairing. There are obviously much more powerful ways to do this. If you don't run Jegantha as a companion, you actually have access to a lot of multicolored spells that have multiple pips of a single color in it that are really powerful for this. But I think that if you are to buy this off the shelf and then upgrade, I think what did we have there? 17 cards that I upgraded myself. You have a deck that can actually contend with other probably around level 6 decks out there. We're not looking for super powerful, but it's a good way to get something to somebody who is used to playing precons and not give them something that's so powerful that they won't understand what they're piloting. Not to mention, you can usually sit this down with people who are piloting the newer precons and probably go toe-to-toe with them. We're not talking high-level play here. Anyway, that is it. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. Keep it positive. I will be removing any negative comments. And until next time, guys, peace.